Hello, everyone. Welcome to Form 1 Religion at St. Anselm's Abbey School, subtitled Old Testament Adventures, Volume 2. This is a continuation of our A Form class at St. Anselm's, in which students read the first 6 books of the Old Testament: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and Joshua. This class will pick up right where that class left off, reading the next several books, all the way up until the destruction of the temple at the hands of the Babylonians. We will read Judges, Ruth, 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, 1 Kings, and 2 Kings. In this video, I'd just like to go over my goals for students this year, and then get into some nuts and bolts, basic procedures, how the class will actually proceed. Students should return to this video in the future, periodically, to refresh their memories on what it is that we are trying to do. We'll begin with goals, the end that I have in mind for our students. The number one goal for this class is very simple. In fact, everything about this class is very simple. I'm going to make students read a lot. They're going to read every word of every page of the stories in the books of the Old Testament that I mentioned on the previous slide. They're going to read a lot. And when I say read, I don't mean open a book and let words bounce off of eyeballs or open a web page and scan a screen until you are hypnotized by blue light. Reading is the foundation of most of the learning that we do. That's probably more true now than ever in distance learning. So when I say read, I mean I need students to not just open a book, but to remember what they read, understand what they read, and be able to explain what they read. And if you can't do that, you can't really read. Not at the level that you need to be able to read at St. Anselm's Abbey School. We read a lot at this school. And as the years go on, the things that you read will get harder and harder. And this class is meant to be the basis of that future education, not only in the religion department, but in others. So this is a reading class, and your primary task will always be to read, remember, understand, and explain. The second goal for the class is to get better at those things. This is the progress goal. Literacy is difficult. It's difficult for everybody, and you only get better at it by meeting the new challenges as they're placed before you. Every year of school, we give you harder things to read. Every year of school, as captured by this somewhat silly illustration on the right here, every year there's another step to take. The reading gets harder, the reading gets longer. We expect you to be able to understand more and explain more. You must make progress throughout the year. You do not progress in literacy by magic. You progress in literacy through doing your own work. The amount that you grow this year is directly proportional to the effort that you put in to doing the assignments that I give you, to completing the exercises, to reading the books. If you cut corners, if you delay doing your work and try to do a lot of it at the end, if you rely too much on outside help, summaries, other people telling you what's happening in the stories, you will not get better. The work will get harder. You will fall farther and farther behind. And when the day comes for you to begin Form 2 religion, you'll be far behind your classmates. Your progress throughout the year is something that you always need to be working on. You're not going to make it in fits and starts. What seems difficult at the beginning of Form 1 should be easy at the end of Form 1. Now, you're going to get stuck. You're going to find things difficult. My job as your teacher is to help you get unstuck and to foresee and help you get through the parts that are too hard for you. And there will be times when you will be working on your own at home and you will need outside help. And I obviously can't stop you from getting it. But you need to become very clear in your mind about the difference between outside help and, for lack of a better term, outside hurt. Every year I have students that come to rely more and more and more on outside assistance, especially summaries of what they've read. And that becomes a trap that is very difficult to escape from, because every time you cut the corners and memorize those summaries instead of actually reading, you get a little bit worse and you fall farther behind relative to your classmates. You will grow, you will get better, but only through your own work, and I will be here to help you do it. Now, the third goal for the class is more of a clarification. We have 7 years of religious studies at St. Anselm's Abbey School, and as the years go on, that religious education gets pretty difficult. We ask you to read many difficult things. You're going to spend your future years of high school reading Plato and Aristotle, Anselm, Aquinas, Augustine, many others. You're going to do pretty interesting and pretty neat stuff. However, in middle school, we don't really do that. Middle school, we're going to not really pursue anything too fancy. We're not going to be looking closely at any doctrine of the church. We're not going to be looking closely at our great philosophical and theological tradition as expressed in the fathers and the doctors. Just like we said in Goal 1, you're going to read. I just want you to be familiar with the stories of the Old Testament, and then at the end of Form 2 next year, the stories of the New Testament as well. We will look at basic moral lessons. There will be some fairly basic theological things going on in what we read, but that will not be our primary emphasis. And very often, I will say to you, my students, it's not clear. When we read the Bible on our own, trying to make our own judgments about what lessons we should draw from it, it's not really clear how to do that. And that's an important feature, not a bug, of how we read the Bible in the church, and something that we will look at more closely in 9th and 10th grade. This year, I just want to model for you some really basic ways to read it, and occasionally we will have a good cause to look at doctrine and the ethics of the Old Testament and the New Testament. But mostly we just want to understand the stories and the history and use it as a springboard for things in the future. Now, those are 3 big goals, big picture. What are we all doing here? Why are we in school together? Now I have a concrete goal for you. This is the one that my students are most interested in, I think. This is your outcome that you're pursuing. This is the result, the thing that you need to make or do in Form 1 religion. This question, what makes a good king of Israel? That is your final exam essay question. You've already got it. At the end of this year, the entirety of your final exam is to write a 2 to 3 page essay submitted to me online, answering this question. Every single thing that we do this year is designed to address this in some way. I'm not interested in a 10-word hot take or silly opinion on what makes a good king of Israel. We're going to spend an entire year trying to understand this question. What are the things implied in the question? What are the problems? What are the obstacles? What are all the different ways we could answer it? And what is the ultimately, unified way in which these books that we're reading answer this question? What is the answer they give to this question? What makes a good king of Israel? Every test you ever take from me will be giving you some partial answer to this. Every homework assignment, story summary, follow-up question, classwork assignment, they will all be components of this. Even before we begin reading anything about kings, before there are kings of Israel, we will be learning about this question. And one of my jobs as your teacher will be to remind you every week, God willing, that this is what we are ultimately trying to do. No matter how lost you feel you're getting in the details of the story, if you remember that we are trying to answer this, you're going to be just fine. And I think that makes for a good segue to some of the nuts and bolts of the class. So let's talk practical matters. You need very little for this class, whether we're meeting in person at St. Anselm's Abbey School or online. You need a textbook, and that textbook is the Bible. At St. Anselm's Abbey School, we would be reading from Bibles that I provide in class. Obviously, if we start out with distance learning, we're going to be reading them online. The standard version that we use The text that we will use in this class is the Revised Standard Version Catholic 2nd edition, printed by Ignatius Press. There's nothing magic about that translation. We could use another one. This is simply the one that we've chosen to use. I've provided a link there below on the screen, and I will, of course, have that link available in all of the assignments that I give you in the online classroom. You can feel free to use other translations if you prefer, with some cautions. Occasionally, my students who use different translations at home because they have a family Bible or because they have as a family they already have a preferred translation, occasionally my students get a little confused when there are differences in the text between what we're reading in class and what they're saying at home. Those differences are seldom major. They are seldom critical. Occasionally they are. And I'm familiar with all of those places where the translations vary. And I will explain in class, here's why your Bible at home is saying something different. Nevertheless, occasionally students do get a little frustrated and a little confused. They forget this point that I'm making now. And so 3 months down the line when they're taking quizzes and they get something wrong and they say, hey, wait a minute, it's because they've forgotten this. If there is ever a discrepancy between the Revised Standard Version Catholic 2nd edition and what you are reading at home, some other online translation or a Bible that you've got in your house, we will default to the Revised Standard Version Catholic 2nd edition. That is our tiebreaker. That is what we will focus on. And I will always make these points. To keep your life simple, you should probably just use that link. One thing I would like you to avoid doing is going out and buying a Bible. However, I understand that staring at a screen all the time is no fun. Your parents may actually very wisely not want you to be staring at a screen for too long. So if you want to go spend some money on a Bible, you can. That version is readily available. You will be reading somewhere between 5 to 10 minutes per chapter when I give you an assignment. I will assign a block of chapters at a time. When I read through a chapter, like Judges chapter 1, which is what the next video will be, or one of the next videos will be, if I read a chapter out loud at pace so that my students can hear it and understand the intonation, it takes me about 5 minutes. Some chapters can be a little longer, some can be shorter, so that number will vary. I can read that chapter a lot faster if I'm not reading it out loud. I can probably read the chapter in 1 minute, maybe 2. I don't expect my students to be able to read the Old Testament as fast as I can. However, if I can read the chapter out loud in 5 minutes, you can certainly read it quietly to yourself, not out loud, in 5 to 10. Now, maybe at the beginning of the year, you're going to be closer to 10 minutes per chapter, which means, given my normal assignment length, you might be reading for 40 minutes at a time, or maybe in 2 20-minute increments. One of your goals through the year is to get faster, so that what took you 10 minutes in September takes you 5 minutes in April. And that will be a good way to track the growth and the progress that we talked about in previous slides. Now, the other thing you're going to need for class is a notebook, a binder. Normally I provide binders, but obviously if we're going to be doing distance learning, that's going to be a little different. So our binder will be all of the online assignments in our online classroom. I will give you story summaries to fill out and follow-up questions to answer. They are your note-taking system. They are the things you should be writing down when you are reading the story for the first time, rereading it to study it, or reflecting on what you have read to make sure you understand it. So all of the assignments that I give you are really just your note-taking. You may need to take additional notes based on the things that we say in class when we're talking together in Zoom. But essentially, what you are constructing in all of these assignments that you will be submitting online is your own digital study guide. You will, of course, be turning them in, and I will grade them. But it's very important that you not view these assignments as a worksheet that you should fill out quickly and turn in and forget about. Do not file and forget these assignments. They are the way that you will study. You are building throughout the year a massive digital study guide of the Old Testament. you could, in theory, publish your own commentary on how the Old Testament books work when you are done. So these assignments are very important. They're very important to do well and thoroughly. And I will spend the year teaching you how to do them better and better. Now, here are the things that I will provide for you as your teacher. You'll have YouTube video lectures on YouTube once or twice per week, depending on where we are in the book and how much we need to explain. Videos like this one, except focused on text, story. I will also provide you written lecture notes and bonus material. I will certainly provide for you any slideshow that I present on YouTube, and I may also write up some additional things, sometimes just for fun. You will have story summary and follow-up questions, and these are your primary assignments that you'll be doing throughout the weeks. And once or twice per week, we will meet on Zoom. When we meet on Zoom, it is not so that I can give you another lecture just like on YouTube. It is so I can ask you questions about the work that you've been doing, and you can tell me the answers. Or, if you're stuck, you can ask me questions, and I can try to give you answers, or I can get your classmates to give you answers. Do not come to a Zoom class with nothing done, expecting me to download a large amount of information to you. I will not do that. You will be expected as students to have already read and already completed a story summary or some other assignment like it before we Zoom together. And then the Zoom time will be a time for us to make corrections and improvements, to talk through the stories. Ultimately, my goal for you as readers of the Old Testament is to be able to tell someone else these stories. I want you to become a storyteller. And that's not going to happen by me telling you what the stories are. That'll be part of it, but part of it is you telling me what the stories are, so that someday you can regale your parents or siblings or whatever with the fairly amazing stories that we're going to read this year. Now, on the right side here, I'm not just going to give you those things on the left to help you. I will also be assessing your progress. I will give you a content quiz on a block of chapters roughly once a week. Usually we read 4 chapters at a time. That number will vary slightly as the years go on, but 4 is the average. I will give you a test at the end of each book. So when we finish Judges, you will take a test on the book of Judges. When we finish 1 Samuel, you'll take a test on the book of 1 Samuel. These tests will be essays. They will be designed to help you begin the elements of the final exam essay question. They will all be related to it. So you're going to want to make sure you not only do them well, but also save them and use them as foundations for what you do at the end of the year. Roughly, there will be 2 exams per trimester. There should always be 2. I'm not yet sure exactly how timing will go with our online courses, but we will make sure that there are at least 2 tests per trimester. We'll do our best. And then finally, in May, you will turn in a 2 to 3 page, depending on formatting, essay or paper explaining thoroughly, exhaustively, what makes a good king of Israel, as we've already discussed. Now, this is an important caveat that is true of any class you take, but especially true of the religion classes that we have designed at St. Anselm's Abbey School. There's a lot of interesting stuff that we're going to do, and I think that you will, if you give it a chance, find the content of this class quite entertaining. But how much you learn in this class and how much fun you have doing it are both entirely up to you. I cannot make you learn anything, and I cannot make you have fun doing it. And if you're dead set on being passive and uninterested, then it will be uninteresting. And I hope that you do not make that choice. As the years go by, we will return to this theme in our religion classes. This is how we begin 9th grade, for example, with one of Plato's most famous treatments of this question here. But we don't need to worry about Plato just yet. You should just think seriously about what you want to get out of this class. And hopefully, after we get a few weeks under our belt, you will see that it is fun and you will commit more and more to it. But if you don't want to have a good time, you will not. If you have any questions on this video or really anything, you can, of course, reach me on the online classroom. and all of the other platforms that I've set up for you. That's going to do it for our first video. I look forward to working with you this year. Keep an eye out for future videos, and I'll see you in class.